FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
Last week, we had such a fun conversation over the topic of these healthcare exchanges that are going to be implemented through the states, rather. State by state by state. And this has become a huge battle, in fact. And I told you the day after the election that the focus on defeating Obamacare was going to fall to the state level. And we've seen a number of governors already stand up to implementing these health exchanges. Rick Perry, we've had Bobby Jindal, Scott Walker, a number of governors. There have been 14, I believe, states altogether who have either voted on some sort of referendum or, like Ohio, completely amended their constitution to either exempt their citizenry from the penalties of not going on Obamacare or to just block their state government from establishing a healthcare exchange in their state altogether. And this has become the battle. And in Missouri, and I'm sure you all heard my conversation with State Representative Jay Barnes last week, didn't go as planned, but in Missouri, we have a veto-proof majority. And we have a lot of Missourians who really just dislike Obamacare. You had Prop E passed by something like 63%. You had Prop C passed by 71%. Both of these were fists in the air against Obamacare in their own ways. And Missouri, you have Democrats voting against Obamacare. So why is it that we have some Republicans in our state legislature who are kind of on the fence or waffling on this issue? Well, we talked last week to one of them who is pro-Obamacare. Joining me right now, Missouri State Senator Scott Rupp, who is still very much against this idea. In fact, he was one of the driving forces behind Prop E as well as Prop C. Senator, good afternoon to you.
That's great to be on.
This is something that you are very much against. Why is it that what is happening right now in Jefferson City where we have enough Republicans who are kind of I don't know, maybe considering implementing these exchanges? What's going on right now?
Well, I think what's happening is you're getting a few handfuls of Republicans that are just getting so caught up in the minutia of Obamacare. And they are trying to say, okay, well, if I do this, if I don't, they haven't taken the step back and looked at the totality of what it's going to do to the state. And they're getting caught up in details. Well, if we don't do this, then you'll lose out on this tax credit. And they're just getting so far into the forest, they've forgotten why they were even on this journey anyway. And you just kind of got to slap them upside the head and say, look at the big picture. Look what it's going to do to businesses. Look what it's going to do to jobs. Look what it's going to do to our state fiscally and financially. And then pull them back from their own misgivings.
What do you make of their argument? Like when I spoke to Representative Barnes last week, he was adamant that regardless, Obamacare is going to happen in the state of Missouri, and we should just go ahead and resign ourselves to this fact.
Well, I mean, I think that you will have Obamacare in a lot of states in some way, shape, or form. But what we as legislators should not be rolling out the red carpet, expanding, the programs and making it a full-blown government takeover. If the states stop Obamacare at the state level, we can stop our small businesses from getting fines because we didn't build a state exchange, which would do a great thing. We have, 8% unemployment. Imagine if you had a state that was pushing a state exchange, and all of a sudden, all the businesses in that state have to pay a $2,000 fine per employee. What would happen to jobs in that state? They would frantically leave for a state that didn't create an exchange. I mean, there's so many things that we can do to stop it. But, I mean, from day one, it's going to cost us $100 to $150 million in Medicaid, even if we don't expand it. So we have to do everything possible to limit its effects.
And this, when I read about the exchanges and how these would be implemented, I know that there are some Republicans in other states who, and some in Missouri too, who believe that, well, if the states act on their own, then at least they'll have some control and they're going to have some say in the matter. But the way that I read it and the way actually that the law reads is that sort of just a veneer. Really, it's going to be HHS that's controlling everything from Washington. They're going to give states like 2 or 3 choices. The states can choose from the selection of pre-selected choices from HHS. But that's, to me, Senator, that doesn't seem as though it's state sovereignty. That doesn't seem like the states are really deciding anything. What do you make of that argument when you hear that from your colleagues?
It's an illusion of choice. There is no choice. we could spend a whole year creating a state-based exchange that could be the most closest thing to a free market type of a system you could possibly come up with under Obamacare. And Sebelius could just say, no, don't want it. Or we don't want that group to participate, or we think their rates are too high. Everything that we do as a state has to be approved by the federal government. And it's an illusion of choice. I mean, there's about 450 key rules on Obamacare they haven't even written the rules for. So why should we go down a road and be expected to create something that's going to put our employers to start getting fines, not know all the rules, and then convince ourselves we have a choice when, in fact, we really don't? It's still up to the federal government to give us a thumbs up, thumbs down.
And you had mentioned that there's, all of these rules that yet have to be written before you even exactly know what you're dealing with. And that's something I know the Republican governor's policy, the Republican Governors Association, the policy arm of their group, they sent a letter to the president, regarding HHS and saying, look, there's a number of things that we have no idea where you stand on this, and we can't implement this on our state and just assume the costs associated with it when we don't know the hard facts. That's a huge problem. I mean, that is kind of a game changer. Can you explain a little bit in sort of layman's terms to listeners how, I mean, really you're kind of walking into a fog with that?
Just look at the expansion of Medicaid piece. The federal government's saying, okay, for the first 3 years, we're going to pay 100% of it. 100% of what? So if you're on 1 or 2 blood pressure medications, are they only going to pay for the first but not the second? And if you have this disease, are they going to cover this procedure? Are they not? And what income level? There are so many questions of 100% of what. So imagine you could walk down and say, the federal government's going to take care of this for us for 3 years. We don't have to pay anything. Kind of like going out and buying a car, and they say, hey, buy this, Maserati. You don't have to make any payments. But then you find out, that was only the interest. I got to pay the principal. I got to pay all the upkeep. I got to pay all of this. I mean, a lot of states are bankrupt. Missouri is not one. We're fiscally conservative, but imagine you went down the road and you bought the Maserati, and next thing you know, you got $250 million of increased costs because their everything wasn't what you thought everything meant.
Right. Well, and that's and plus too the deadline with this as well. And this is something else I wanted to ask you about. This was, I think, the second time that Kathleen Sebelius has pushed this back. The first time it was extended was till last Friday. Now we have till December 14th. I don't even think that they're even going to keep to the December 14th deadline. And even if, assuming worst case scenario here, a state decided that they wanted to implement this exchange, there's nothing barring them. This deadline seems to be completely arbitrary.
Well, the key deadline, Missouri cannot create a state-based exchange. The question is, would we create a state-federal partnership exchange? Because we passed that deadline. They extended that one into February 15th. So, what the Hospital Association and some of the insurance companies want to do is they want us to go ahead and move forward with the partnership exchange, or we're going to do some of it, the federal government will do some of it. Then they still have a whole nother legislative session to beat on the legislature to say, well, you need to pass a law creating a state-based exchange and then revert back to it because you would have still hit the deadline for the partnership exchange. So, they're continuing to move these. They're still trying everything they can to get back to creating an exchange. I think they're going to continue to move the deadlines back, but we have to be adamant that whether it's a state exchange, a partnership exchange, it's a no-go. If you allow the federal government to do this under their own law, if you read it, it says that the trigger on the penalties for the small business people are triggered if the state creates an exchange. We don't create one, it falls back on the federal government. That means you don't have to pay that penalty. That'll be great for jobs in our state, and we can maintain control. And show me in the federal government's budget where they set aside money to pay for creating 20 or 30 exchanges. So you're going to see all these governors and legislators say no to it. They don't have the money. The only way to stop Obamacare is at the state level, and that's where we have to draw the line.
Do you hope that you see enough states stand up to this, because right now we have 14 states and a number of other governors that are standing with us. There are 30 Republican governorships across the country. It seems as we have the upper hand. What do you hope to see in the coming months?
Well, what I hope to see is more and more states, once they start to realize the fiscal impact. Even if they want to get past, the argument of should we have one or not, just look at the sheer numbers. You take a state that is already in debt. Here's the hidden cost that no one is anticipating. And that is, in every state you have, 14, 15% uninsured or people that could qualify for Medicaid right now that don't participate. Either they don't know about the program, they don't want state funding, or whatever. If you put in a state exchange and all of a sudden that person gets a tax or a penalty applied to them because they didn't participate, they're immediately going to go sign up for the new program. So even if a state doesn't create an exchange, you're still going to cost that state anywhere from $150 to $200 million. So I think when these states start looking at the cost, the hidden cost to Obamacare, even if they do nothing, they're going to say, wow, well, there's no way on earth we could even afford even going down this road, and you'll see a big roadblock be put up.
Wow. Well, we appreciate you listening to the will of the voters. I mean, they've twice rejected this, because you were very much involved with Prop C and Prop E, one of the driving forces behind it, and we appreciate you for that. Senator Scott Rupp, thank you very much, sir, for your voice.
Oh, well, thanks for sounding the alarm. You always do a great job protecting the taxpayer.
Take care. We look forward to talking with you again soon. Thanks. Bye.